Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. America secures the Panama Canal. In a significant step and one that should have taken place years ago before the Schein-Episodes got embedded in our backyard, new Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced a deal with the Panamanian president. The Panama Canal will be secured end-to-end by the United States. Further, U.S. military ships will be given priority through the canal. Panama has also withdrawn from a Schein-Episode Belt and Road Initiative as part of the deal. In addition, the U.S. will return to operation of several military bases and begin joint training operations with Panama's military. As I mentioned in a previous Saving America, the canal is the second busiest waterway in the world and is crucial to U.S. water transportation and, of course, military access. Parallel to this, two critical Panamanian ports are now controlled by C.K. Hutchinson, which is controlled by China. A buyout by a mega group including BlackRock, announced a $23 billion deal in early March. However, it is on hold since early April as the Schein-Episodes are panicked about the deal. I think something will be done here, but not the next few days. Again, it's crucial to tie back the aggression of the Schein-Episodes in the world stage, but especially in Panama, given it's in our backyard. Democrats run away from American values. Any American senator, Dem or GOP, should represent American values. Right now, we have in massive neon lights Senator Chris Van Hollen flying to El Salvador at the expense of U.S. taxpayers to cuddle up with an MS-13 gang member whose wife took out a restraining order on him since he beat her. Folks, I cannot make this stuff up. Incredibly, the same day the jury verdict for the murder by an illegal of Rachel Morin, a Maryland mother of 5, was announced. It was not an accidental murder. She was brutally raped and then killed. The evidence was so overwhelming that the jury deliberated for less than an hour. I am reading that he is likely to get life in prison. I believe the death penalty is the only appropriate penalty here. How can Van Hollen be this out of touch with the state and the American people? This is disgusting. I understand that he has never reached out to Morin's family. I call on the taxpayers of Maryland to demand that he personally cover the cost of his airfare to visit an MS-13 gang member. Further, that a recall be initiated for this insensitive whack job. Maine governor clueless on what America wants. Of course, Maine Governor Janet Mills has openly defied the Trump administration executive order enforcing Title IX to prohibit biological males from women's sports and locker rooms. This means she is also defying her own voters who strongly favor protecting women in sports. The latest is the best U.S. Attorney General in the years, Pam Bondi, has filed suit in federal court to protect the rights of women and girls in Maine. I note that the left-leaning USA Today called supporters of the lawsuit anti-trans activists. Sorry, you jerks. Advocating for the rights of women is not being anti-trans, it is being rational. Despite the small number of biological males playing in high school and collegiate sports, the number of injuries is disconcerting. This is about safety, and that is why it is so popular with the American public. Biden gives a televised speech. Why? No less than far-left actor George Clooney threw Biden out of the 2024 election since Biden was visibly so far gone mentally. Sadly, dementia, at least so far in the medical science, is not reversible. In what universe would it have made sense to have Biden speak to reporters over his back fence, much less give a speech that was televised? Gee whiz! The press keeps making a big deal about his age. Again and again, it is not his numerical age, it is his mental state of visible dementia. In this case, he rambled and shouted. I regard having him stay in the White House as long as he did to be elder abuse. Parading him out for the rest of us sane people to make fun of him doubles down on elder abuse. Some of my audience may say, hey, Dr. Dave, you're being rough and unkind about Demented Joe. Well, I regard him as a token as all that is wrong in America. He was in office for 50 years and accomplished nothing to advance the American people. All the evidence that I have seen indicates that he ran some type of scam to sell his influence as VP through family members. He was not demented at that time, so I still want him prosecuted for that. I want him stripped of his ill-gotten possessions and put in a hospital for the insane. Many recently have called for a full investigation into who was really running the White House. Which liberal fools were making these irresponsible pardon decisions at the end? American taxpayers are entitled to know, and soon. A humorous note in the speech by Demented Joe was that he supposedly was there to defend Social Security. The problem is that he did nothing in 50 years to help Social Security. Trump has promised to protect it. Face it, folks, America is broke and has massive Social Security and Medicare IOUs facing it in the near future. All Americans should be pushing to come up with a reform plan. Telling lies about the Trump administration is definitely not going to help. And as if the Dems needed more bad news, mortgage fraud allegations against Letitia James. Most Americans know that Letitia James was the New York Attorney General that went after Trump for reportedly inflating the value of properties he owned that were mortgaged. This is despite the fact that not a single bank had complained. The huge bogus ruling against him is likely to be vacated on appeal. Now, allegations have surfaced that the New York resident claimed that her principal personal residence was a property in Virginia to get more favorable financing. The Federal Housing Finance Agency has raised these issues of fraud. Another allegation is that she has a 5-unit property in Brooklyn, but claimed it only had 4 units in permit applications and mortgage documents to get better treatment. Even more entertaining, she has been reported to have shown her father as her husband on loan docs, again to get more favorable terms. This could lead to prosecution for wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution. I've heard one expert opine that she may have to resign her position even if she's just charged with these crimes, not awaiting a possible conviction. Hey, we'll be watching this one. Antitrust ruling against Google. A federal judge in Virginia has ruled that Google is an online advertising monopoly. This was in response to a suit brought by the U.S. Department of Justice. It is the third antitrust hit that the company has taken recently. Of course, Google, through its parent company Alphabet, will be appealing all these decisions for many years to come. So ultimately, the outcome will not really be known until the final appeals are concluded. Meta, the Facebook parent, faces its own antitrust action. In the meantime, another one of the Magnificent Seven, as a handful of big tech companies are known, is also going through the ringer. The feds are arguing that Facebook, through its ownership of Instagram and WhatsApp, controls the social media market for personal communications. In the interest of full disclosure, I've never been a fan of Zuckerberg, so the case is just fine with me. The underlying situation is that about a decade ago, Instagram was moving up rapidly and was bought by Meta to prevent it from competing with Facebook. Folks, that sounds a lot like a monopoly effort. Go woke, go broke, Delaware. The movie theater company AMC has announced that it's moving its headquarters out of Delaware to Nevada. A summary report indicates that about 20 major companies have joined the exodus from Delaware. Those include Madison Square Garden Entertainment and Simon Properties, the country's largest mall operator. One trigger was the highly reported departure of Elon Musk's companies. He relocated Tesla and SpaceX to Texas, while Neuralink and Twitter X moved their headquarters to Nevada. Tiny Delaware was the darling of the big corporations for about 2 centuries. This was due to its corporate laws and specialized court that advanced the development of major American corporations. It is hard to summarize the reason for the departures, but some claim that it is due to a trend toward less friendly to business court decisions. The big one was a ruling against a huge compensation package for Musk from Tesla. In fact, Musk tried twice and lost both times as shareholder groups opposed the package. The allegations are that Delaware courts have gone woke, way woke, and corporations have a choice. They can move to other states, and of course, we're happy to have them here in Texas.
All rise.
Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you will agree that she deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Patty Catter. She is the host of Wake Up with Patty Catter, which is on Brushwood Media Network, which also airs this show, Saving America. Her show shares powerful stories of resilience, leadership, and patriotism, inspiring meaningful conversations and positive change. Her motto, Bound by Strength, United for Freedom, reflects her unwavering commitment to service. Married to Ken, a Marine Corps and Army veteran with a Purple Heart, wounded in Iraq in 2007, Patty became his caregiver, helping him navigate life after combat. She has a deep connection to the military and first responder communities. She comes from a law enforcement family, having served as a police reservist. She understands the sacrifices of those who have dedicated their lives to protecting others. She has a business, Catter Enterprises, LLC, and strives to encourage people to listen to one another, to be more open-minded, and to embrace one another through effective communications. We welcome Patty Catter for her first appearance on Saving America.
Wow, thank you. That's the best introduction, and you did a lot of homework on that.
We're doing our best here, and we love to have wonderful guests like you, and we're glad you liked the intro. And as you know, we ask our guests 3 questions to give them a chance to expose to our audience the kind of things that you're involved in. And you describe your commitment to podcasting as an early adapter. Tell our audience how your program developed.
Right. So way back in 2006, my husband, Ken, was deployed to Iraq. And while he was there, I needed a way to communicate with military spouses because some of them started moving away from Fort Bragg, where we were located at the time. And so I found this little recording platform, and we started using it just to connect the military loved ones with one another. And next thing you know, I'm learning it's actually something called a podcast. So in 2007, it was April 2007, when we lost 9 of our soldiers who were in my husband's unit. That's when we launched this platform, and then later started figuring out, like, wow, this is a podcast.
Wow, that's something else. And you're helping a disabled vet. Sounds like a special challenge. What can you tell us about your husband's path forward? What happened to him, and what's happened since then?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to. When I met my husband, he was just getting out of the Marine Corps. You know, he had a air about him where he has these muscles, and he's pretty, very, very confident. And he then became a police officer. When he was transitioning out of the Marine Corps, he went into the law enforcement field, which I was very familiar with. My grandfather was a retired law enforcement police officer himself in Flint, Michigan. My father, he was on the mounted unit in Genesee County of Michigan. And so I knew, a little bit about police work. I thought that was great. It was amazing. We ended up starting a family, had a beautiful home in Michigan on 30 acres, and just a beautiful life. 9/11 happened, and he started being called to join the military again. Unfortunately, he was too old to go back into the Marines full time, so he ended up joining the Army full time. And from there, he just went in, head first. He was a paratrooper there because in recon Marines, he did, jumping out of the airplanes and the helicopters and all that stuff. So he still wanted something high speed. So he joined the Army as a Cav Scout. Quickly deployed to help with Hurricane Katrina cleanup, and then deployed to Iraq, and that was in 2006. Right away, within the first couple of months here, let's see, he deployed in August 2006, and in October, I believe it was, off the top of my head, gosh, I should remember this, but it's been a while. He unfortunately lost his truck driver, was killed. His truck commander, TC is what they call it. And my friend Katie lost her husband within 3 days of each other. That happened. Ken came home on what they call R&R. We went to both of those funerals. The guys ended up being buried right next to each other. And then he went back to Iraq for another year or so. So during that time, he was wounded in May of 2007. He stayed there while he finished the mission with the guys. At that point, they had lost so many, and some of them were coming back with amputees. He stayed there. He did suffer a head injury. It was documented when it happened. An IED, or basically an explosive, went off underneath the seat of his vehicle. As they were pulling him out, they hit another one. And so there was a couple right there in a row. It did knock him out. He had blood coming out of his ears. The medic documented it. He did receive a Purple Heart for that. But it wasn't until he came home that we really understood the gravity of his injuries the first day that he was home. And I can pause there because I know I just gave you a lot.
Well, you're rolling, but as you know, I'm the son of a long-term vet and very close to the military. It sounds like Ken has the Marine attitude of, you charge in there and you go get him, and working even though he in very dangerous conditions. So he gets home. Then what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first day that he was home, we were all excited. My parents were over. We made a big dinner. We grilled outside on the grill. And within an hour after we ate, he says, "When are we having dinner?" And I thought, okay, shell shock, probably tired, exhausted. I mean, they just came back from this horrid deployment. He just needs to relax and unwind a little bit. But unfortunately, that night he had a seizure while he's sleeping. It woke me up, and it just kind of escalated from there. So being the kind of person that I am, I'm like, you need to talk to your chain of command. You have to go to the doctor. Like, this is crazy. So he wasn't really fond of wanting to do that himself, but I was like, you just need to go get help. So he did. He went, they sent him to a neurologist, and right away that neurologist diagnosed him with a traumatic brain injury. And he stayed in the military from the time that he got home from that deployment until 2010, when they medically retired him specifically and solely for the purpose of medical treatment. So he had all sorts of things going on. He had hearing loss, he had brain injury, which caused him to have vestibular problems, so problems with gait and walking, and he couldn't remember how to sign his name when he came home. And in fact, he still doesn't sign his name, he just scribbles it. But there's some things that just don't matter. Doctors have just as bad a handwriting. So when he came home at that point, we were just happy to have him home. The kids were thrilled to have him home. The day he left for his deployment, some of the neighborhood kids said, your dad's going to die in war because that's what soldiers do. And so for that 15 months that he was gone, the kids couldn't sleep very well either. They were going through their own trauma of having a dad that's not around. And then when he comes back, the kids are seeing his injuries as well. And, they went through a lot too as kids. Their dad would say things like, who left the clothes in the dryer? He left the clothes in the dryer, So some things, but again, some things didn't matter and some things were difficult.
And how is he now?
So he still has residuals of brain injury. He still has that short-term memory loss. He still, I guess the biggest thing to understand is as a military family who's been through something like this, and anybody who has an injury or a wound, it's been so long that we get used to things and doing things the way that we do to tailor to his life. It becomes our new normal or our second normal.
Yes, I understand. You adapt to it, but then when you get out in public, the public sometimes is not as sensitive to why somebody is doing things. And by the way, tell Ken on the signature, I have stopped signing my name. Fortunately, when I could still sign my name, I made a copy of it. And I can drop it into letters, and so I can have this beautiful signature. But I actually personally signed a check last night, and it's illegible. But apparently my local credit union sees my legible signature. So my case is certainly not military related. I just have arthritis in my hands and all that. So tell Ken to hang in there. There's a lot of us who can't write our name anymore. But,
well,
I'm sure it'll work out.
yeah, a few years ago, he went for brain stem cell therapy.
Yes.
And they told us within a year, you might start noticing something different with yourself. Maybe you'll start feeling better or something. Well, about a year later, he went to what's it called? The bariatric chamber treatment. And the hyperbaric treatment, that's it. Not the other one. That's a weight loss. He didn't do the weight loss. So he went to this process. And when he was there was another soldier who said, hey, Ken, do you want to paint something? And Ken's like, nah, dude, I don't paint. And he said, give it a try. Just give it a try. And he did. And you would not believe that Ken can paint now. The doctor, the neurologist at Fort Bragg said, within about 5 years, you could very well be in a vegetative state. We found out that statement was because of the prescription side effects that he was having. That was another story for another day. He paints, he has sketches that he puts out on his Instagram. That's all he does now. He literally just sits and paints a lot of paintings.
Well, that's cool. Well, maybe you can find a vet event where people be interested in supporting that and buying the paintings. I'm a big fan of original art, by the way. We here at my office in Houston, we actually display a lot of original artwork that I've collected over the years. So it's certainly something a lot of American families are interested in. Well, Patty, as you know, we try and keep these short so that the audience will stay tuned and pay attention. What's your best advice that you can give our audience when faced with real adversity? And certainly you've just described a really tough situation for you and your family.
Yeah. You don't always feel like it, but you have two choices. Every day you have two choices. You sink or you swim. So it's up to you. I mean, you can do whatever it is that you want with your two choices. Sink or swim. If you choose to swim, it's going to be hard sometimes, but I guarantee that you're going to get further ahead if you just keep swimming.
Sounds like some tough advice. Of course, some of us barely do the dog paddle, but we'll certainly keep that in mind. Patty, it's been wonderful having you visit us. How can our audience get more information about you and your podcast?
Head over to my website, Patty Katter, Patti, Katter, KATTER.com. You'll see all of my social media links there.
Please proceed.
firebombing of the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. In something that's hard to conceptualize, an individual who appeared to have anti-Semitic hatred somehow climbed over a wall, broke into the mansion late at night, firebombing 2 rooms. Even though the governor and his family were in the mansion at the time, fortunately, nobody was injured. The damages are reported to be extensive. The issue underscores the serious issue of violence in America, driven by political positions. In my lifetime, I have never seen it reach this pitch. Polls indicate that a significant percentage of liberals feel that even killing Trump or Musk would be okay. This is a horrendous report, and I hope people were engaging in hyperbole and do not really feel that way. Gosh almighty.
How does the defendant plead?
Ending daylight savings time. Even when I was younger, that transition to daylight savings time in the spring was never easy. As I've aged a bit, it seems to hit harder. Then messing with the clocks in the fall. From my perspective, I'll take either leaving it advanced or leaving it on international time. However, my personal preference is that we stay with the international time system, given the way the whole world communicates today. I think this is most friendly for business and personal applications. What do you think?
Please raise your right hand.
As we grow up, a common reference for success or failure is the letter grade. Whether we are in grammar school or college, we all want an A grade and certainly regard an F as a big failure. Here at Saving America, we scan the news for reports of celebrities, politicians, or others who just end up in the public eye. So the A grades are awarded to people and organizations for great service to their communities, and the F grades, of course, are unfortunately more common, are awarded to those who need to do a lot better. Official F grade for the disgrace known as Joe Biden. Members of my regular audience know that I am the author of the book, Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failures. In that book, I provide letter grades for the American presidents for what I call the American Empire. That started with Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I around 1918. The book ended with Obama's presidency in 2016. That book was published in early 2018. Most agreed with the rankings of the presidents in terms of rank order, but still felt the grades that I assigned were a little too tough. I do not agree, of course. We only need to look at the massive national debt, the additional unfunded burden that is more than double the declared national debt, and the shortfalls in Social Security and Medicare to know that leaders from both parties have failed America. Hopefully in 2026, I'll release an updated book with chapters for Trump and Biden. But let's focus on a clown who is in office for 50 years, but has nothing good to show for it. In fact, the higher up the ladder he went, the more destruction he caused. On his first day occupying the White House, he reversed most of the initiatives created by Trump. This directly led to the explosion of illegals, estimated to be 8 to 10 million illegals in this country during his only 4 years in office. That includes convicts who are guilty of murder and a massive illegal drug problem. The country has also been damaged by a scourge of child abuse and trafficking of adults and children. He also killed the Keystone Pipeline, a true lifeline that will help America to be the leaders in energy for its own security as well as its allies. The latest is that the Democrats are trying to sell the materials for the border wall in an effort to frustrate Trump's plans to finish the wall. They apparently forgot the part about that they work for the taxpayers. That's taxpayer money, folks. In addition, we have instability around the globe with a special focus on Ukraine, the Middle East, and of course, dealing with the deranged Z in Red China. And who could forget the surrender of the Bagram airfield and the 13 dead Americans in one bomb blast during the botched Afghanistan withdrawal? We then come to the pardons. Nobody in America can be surprised that he pardoned his son Hunter. However, some misunderstood that this was to pardon himself, not Hunter. That removed Hunter turning state's evidence and ratting out Biden and his brother James. I still call for the Comer Commission to finish the investigation of this crew and, if appropriate, file charges. Inexplicably, another 1,538 grants of pardons and commutations were announced. This is interesting since they do not appear to have been carefully researched. One that attracted the most attention is former Pennsylvania Judge Michael Conahan. He was convicted in 2011 of funneling juveniles to for-profit detention centers in exchange for more than $2 million in kickbacks. He was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison after pleading guilty to racketeering and conspiracy charges. A number of those youngsters who were sent to these unearned facilities have had great difficulty following their incarceration. And in one particular case, a youngster did commit suicide. The families of the victims of this judge are going crazy over just that one pardon. How does freeing convicted criminals, including drug dealers and other bad actors, help the Democrat Party or Biden's already pathetic legacy? Inquiring minds want to know. Given how off the rails this appears to be, I have to question is if this is a play-for-pay scheme. Perhaps rewards to Biden with cash for an undeserved presidential library, or maybe just straight payola. I did want to raise an important legal question. Could we use the 25th Amendment to disqualify Biden mentally after the fact, in turn, revoke anything he did in his last month or 6 months, etc.? Let's see. I'm sure that my listeners are aware of his attempt to buy votes by writing off student debt. Not only did that backfire in his face, but the federal courts consistently ruled that he could not do so, and he kept on doing it. Then the unauthorized and, in my opinion, illegal application of rules to allow illegals to appear to be here legally has been a continuing problem. KTRH Houston claims that over 1 million illegals have been granted TPS, temporary protection status. This prevents deportation of foreign nationals who come from countries that are designated as ones experiencing famine, war, or natural disasters. Of course, this does not apply to most of the millions here illegally. There are 17 countries with TPS designations from Afghanistan to Venezuela. I might be okay with some of this if there was a legitimate screening process and proper limits placed on it, like having a sponsor with, say, 90 to 120 days. Then we had lawfare against Trump combined with ridiculous and unconstitutional treatment of the protesters on January 6, 2020. We've experienced the politicization of the FBI, DOJ, and other government agencies. This must be undone and then never be allowed to happen again. There's much more to say, but hey, time is limited. Dr. Dave awards the Saving America F grade to the disgrace known as Joe Biden.
Motion denied.
Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. International excise taxes can be a tough road for businesses. Texas Truck Parts and Tire, based in Houston, Texas, is a wholesaler and retailer of truck parts and tires. It purchased tires from Chinese manufacturers between 2012 and 2017. Texas Truck did not file quarterly excise tax returns or pay excise taxes on those tires. It claimed that the Chinese manufacturers were the importers responsible for the tax. Following an IRS audit, Texas Truck was assessed approximately $1.9 million in taxes. Texas Truck paid only a portion of the taxes and then filed for a refund. The IRS ignored the refund request. Then Texas Truck filed a lawsuit seeking a refund. The government counterclaimed for the remaining taxes owed. Right off, it sounds like Texas Truck should have waited for the IRS to sue them. Maybe they would have skipped it. The U.S. District Court granted a summary judgment in favor of Texas Truck. It determined that the Chinese manufacturers were the importers and less liable for the excise tax. The court's reasoning was that Texas Truck did not bring the tires into the United States under the applicable Treasury regulations. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit reviewed the case and held that Texas Truck was the beneficial owner of the tires and therefore liable for the excise tax. The court found that the district court erred by not considering whether Texas Truck was the beneficial owner under the Treasury regulation. The IRS appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It concluded that under the specific facts with the way the tires were imported into the United States, that the Chinese manufacturers were the nominal importers, but that Texas Truck was really the beneficial owner under the structure of the transaction. Therefore, Texas Truck was responsible for the excise tax. Consequently, the court reversed the district court summary judgment in favor of Texas Truck and rendered judgment for the government and remanded the case to the district court to determine the damages. It's not clear from the decision, but I think if the tires had come in a large shipment and were distributed to various wholesalers, Texas Truck might have had an argument. The case implies that the tire shipments went directly to this company.
Objection, Your Honor.
Something that would never happen in the private sector. Apparently, many federal employees are spending most of their time on taxpayers' payroll doing work for their unions. A bill recently proposed by the Republicans in Congress would end taxpayer-funded union activities by federal employees. Apparently, Trump tried to limit this to 25% of their work time, which I still find ridiculous, but Biden-Harris administration reversed this rule, and that means that you could have people on the federal payroll spending 100% of their time working on their union activities. One of my planks in saving America is to have our federal workforce do real work or get fired. Doing union business should be on their own time, period, end of discussion.
May I remind you, you're still under oath.
Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure you'll agree that he deserves the moniker of an interesting person. Saving America welcomes George Fernandez. He is a visionary leader and entrepreneur with over 20 years of executive experience in both private and publicly traded companies. He specializes in electronic payments, ATMs, cryptocurrency, and precious metals.
Thank you.
Throughout his career, George has driven the creation and implementation of strategic and has established several companies as market leaders. He's played a pivotal role in decision-making, actively participating in design, market strategy development, and launch of innovative products, including the world's first ATM to dispense gold-backed notes. He has a proven track record of not just launching and scaling successful ventures such as PowerCoin and Level 4 Americas, but also in cultivating a collaborative and innovative company culture. Under his leadership, PowerCoin rose to become one of the most profitable crypto ATM deployers globally. During his time at Level 4 Americas, he guided the company to its position as the largest retail ATM deployer in Mexico and a prominent player in ATM software testing in the U.S. He steered Paramount to become one of the largest ATM operators in the U.S., led Heller Capital through strategic acquisitions and boosting their market power. George has served on the board of the ATM Industry Association, established the Crypto Deployers Forum. He is a recipient of numerous industry awards, the Lifetime Achievement Award from ATMIA, and also listed in the Marquis Who's Who directory, holds an MBA in International Business from UMiami, Herbert School of Business, and a BS in Marketing and Computer Science from Seton Hall University. He is fluent in English and Spanish. He's presently Chief Strategy Officer of Magnus Consulting, operating from both Florida and Puerto Rico. We had to shorten his bio so he would have time for the interview itself. We welcome George Fernandez for his first appearance on Saving America.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, for that introduction. Are you sure that that's me that you're reading all the stuff about?
Well, I sure hope so. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble for false advertising here or something like that. So,
I appreciate the invitation of being here.
You bet. Well, we're delighted to have you. And you are speaking to us today from your base in Puerto Rico. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Your first time interview from the island, and we're delighted to have you. As you know, we ask three general questions of our guests. In our years interviewing guests on Saving America, you're our first guest to speak about Puerto Rico. You have shared with me that the island is faced with challenges, but many are the result of problems of administration. Please explain more about that to our audiences.
Sure. So one qualifier before I gave my opinions, and that is I am not Puerto Rican. I wasn't born here. I wasn't raised here. I've been traveling to this island for the last 30 years on business. I've been married to a wonderful Puerto Rican lady for the last 12 years, and I've lived here for the last 5. So that's kind of my connection to the island. I have gotten pretty involved in the local, politics, not being a politician, but just being aware of what's going on in the island. And I find that, traveling the world sometimes is better to have an opinion about something when you're not emotionally connected to that subject, right? So as I've traveled here and as I lived here, and, again, having a Puerto Rican in my house, I hear a lot of the things that are historical, which have led to some of the problems. And again, having my background, and I'm originally Cuban, but I lived in Spain and the United States and lived abroad, done business all over the world. I'm able to look at the situation here with a completely different set of eyes from perhaps the locals who look at it mostly from a passionate perspective and point of view. So that as a background to make sure that people understand that I'm saying this not as a Puerto Rican, but as an unattached person in this situation. So on to your question. This is an island that it's 100 miles across and 35 miles up and down. On its best day, it has about 3 million people that reside here. So you look at it and you say, it should not be a difficult place to manage and govern. Yet it is. I am a amazing patriotic American, but I think a lot of the issues in this island are caused by the United States, because this is a place that historically, it's never been independent. It was first a Spanish colony for many, many years. And then, over the last 100 years or so, it's been an American colony, right? And even as an American colony, it's gone through a couple of different gyrations of that over the last, since the early 50s or so. It's a commonwealth of the United States, and Puerto Ricans are American citizens. But because it's not a state and it's not an independent country, it's kind of in this hybrid middle. And that creates a lot of the confusion of the local population here about who they are. Are they Puerto Ricans? Are they U.S. citizens? And the population is kind of divided, right? A lot of them, Puerto Ricans are very proud of the island. They're very proud of their heritage. And so you ask any Puerto Rican in the streets, they will tell you that they're first, they're Boricuas, and Boricua is even more than Puerto Rican. Is more like a deep sense of patriotism to the island. But at the same time, they have a passport that doesn't say they're Puerto Rican citizens, right? They have a passport that says they're American citizens, and they get most of the funding for anything in this island comes from the United States. But the problem is the United States just sends money over, right, without any accountability. And there is where I think the problem lies, right? This island receives billions and billions and billions of dollars every year in aid from the United States, whether it's for social programs or just direct cash, right? But very little accountability. And human beings are very easy to corrupt. So when you have that amount of money in the hands of people that are not being sort of held to any kind of responsibility what they do with the money, it only helps to create this corruption, right, that is going on here. And a lot of the issues in this island are because most of the administrations, and regardless of what party is in power, they use that money and in a corrupt way. Again, these are all my opinions, but if you look at the amount of money that gets sent to the island, and then you look at the infrastructure here, things don't make any sense. Like the roads here are in very poor shape. The electric system in this island is held together by barbed wire and duct tape, right? The Hurricane Maria in 2017 kind of showed the poor state of the system, and it hasn't been repaired. It was kind of patched up, and we get electricity, but 99% of the homes in the island have a generator, right? Because we don't trust the power grid, we don't trust the generation. So you look at this island. This is an island which has one governor and literally 100 senators and representatives, right? And each one of those has a staff of people. There's 78 municipalities, each one with a mayor and staff, right? In an island, 100 by 35 with 3 million people. It's not possible to cover something like this, right? There was a study done that for every dollar that this island receives in aid, 46 cents of that goes to govern, right? It doesn't have to be that way. So I think, if you were to streamline the government in this place, you will probably have a much more efficient government. And if the United States were to put accountability for every dollar that they send to the island, I think we would eliminate some of this corruption that we have here. So government here is not people that run for governor, not just government, but any local, any public service office. It's kind of a job, right? Let's go be in power so that we can take advantage of these wonderful benefits that the United States mainland, as they call the country here, sends us every year. And so I have personal experience where people have said, hey, our party's in power right now, let's go eat at the buffet. Literally, that's how it was sold to me. And qualifier, I'm not a politician, will never pretend to be a politician. I don't like it. I stay clear of it, but it is a hobby of mine to see how the politicians work. And in my job, I've had to not just go appear before the U.S. Senate for some things that were being proposed that were going to damage our industry, but I've also appeared before the Mexican Senate for something similar. And I've spent a great deal of time between 2012 and 2014 walking the hallways of the Senate here because they were going to do something similar. So I'm very familiar with how politics works, which is why I stay clear of it. But
it is pretty interesting. And I think where you've been going ties in nicely with our second question, which is, what is the viewpoint of Puerto Ricans about becoming the 51st state of the United States, which has been bopped around mostly as a political weapon because the Democrat Party believes that the island would be primarily a Democrat stronghold. I don't know if that's even true, but what are you seeing there on the ground?
Yeah, so because Puerto Rico is not a U.S. State, right? There's primarily two parties here, which have nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. The population here is divided amongst people that want statehood, right? They want Puerto Rico to be a state, and that is called the PNP party, the Partido Nuevo Progresista. And then there's the Popular Party. The Popular Party wants Puerto Rico to remain its current status quo. Okay, and then there has been an independent party that up until this year has been on the fringes, right? People that want Puerto Rico to be an independent nation, and that used to be polling around 1% of the population. Interesting this year, that party created an alliance with another party in the island, and all the polls say that they are going to be second, which is historical in the island, right? Beating the PPD, which is the Popular Party, which wants this place to be a status quo. So if they get that kind of support, it's going to be interesting how the politics in the island are going to change. Most of the polls show that Jennifer Gonzalez is going to be the new governor, and she belongs to the PNP party, which is the pro-statehood. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is a lot of it is politics, to your point, right? In order for Puerto Rico to be a state, you have to have a supermajority of people voting for it. That has never happened. The best time that they've had in that is a 52% plebiscite that they did in 2012 around there, which it got 52%, but then the other party cried foul because of the way they worded the question. So the island is kind of divided between half that want it to be a state and the other half that don't want it to be a state. And the people that don't want it to be a state is mostly because of cultural reasons, right? People are, I said at the beginning, Puerto Ricans are very proud of their culture. They feel like they are Boricuas rather than American citizens. They use the passport when it's convenient, but that's when it's convenient, when they travel and to get the aid and all of that stuff. But on the day-to-day basis, Spanish is the local language that people use to communicate. And I venture to say that maybe 45% of the population is bilingual. Even though the education department here gets $5 billion a year in aid from the U.S. government, it's kind of ridiculous that the population is not 100% bilingual. You'll find Costa Ricans are more bilingual than Puerto Ricans, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And so the PPD wants to be status quo, send me the money, I'm going to use it however I want to, I'm going to govern myself, and I'm going to keep my culture, I'm going to send my own Miss Universe contestant, I'm going to send my own team to the Olympics. And believe it or not, as bizarre as that sounds, that is a reason that they use in order to continue to be in this status quo. The PNP party says, no, we are discriminated against because we're second-class citizens. When I've challenged everybody to define what those things are for me, nobody can give me a reasonable, unemotional answer, right? So the people that want to be independent, the PNP party, I say, well, how are you discriminated? Please explain that to a non-Puerto Rican. And they give me all these things, which are all emotional, right? None of them are factual. And so I think because of the interesting dichotomy of the island, again, there's a lot of confusion as to who are we, right? As an island, as a nation. And some people do identify with being Americans. And the PNP party they wave both flags with equal enthusiasm. And it's funny. I'm a gringo here, which is kind of ridiculous, right? But I'm a gringo here. I have a U.S. flag on my truck, and people go, oh, they refer to me in my neighborhood as the gringo, and I'm like, what's a gringo? So are you. I remember one time there was this soccer team. Anyway, it's a long story, but the U.S. was playing another country for the World Cup, and the U.S. lost, and this bunch of guys were sort of being glad that the Americans lost, but they were doing it in a very derogatory manner, and F gringo and this, that, and the other. And I went over there and I said, hey, what part of Colombia are you from? And he said, what are you talking about? I'm Boricua, and I'm like, why do you say that? I go, because you were talking crap about the gringos, but I bet you have a U.S. passport, right? And that threw him for a complete loop, right? And I was doing it to prove a point, right? Like, you call me gringo, but so are you. But it's part of the challenge of living here. I see when people from the mainland come to live here because they have these tax incentive programs, and they come to live here and they struggle for the first 6 months to a year because they come with the belief that, this is just like moving to Kansas. No, it isn't. This is more like moving to Central America than it is to moving to Kansas, right? The infrastructure is different, the culture is different, everything is different. But there's this underlying feeling about the gringo that is coming to the island. There's a whole bunch of people that are very resentful that Americans are buying up a lot of the good Americans, right? That are buying up a lot of the good property in the island. And I'm not emotionally attached to any of this stuff. So even though I've been coming here for 30 years, I've been married to a Puerto Rican for 10 or 12 now, and living here for 5, my rational mind still cannot grasp this this feeling. And my wife has told me, it's like, the problem is, George, that you are a gypsy, right? You grew up you were born in one place, you grew up in 2 or 3 other places, and you've been traveling the world for 30 years, and you don't have this sense of patriotism and all of that. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Maybe if I was born and raised here and had the history that the Puerto Ricans have, maybe I would feel that way. But since I don't, I look at all these things in a very practical matter, and a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. My father, taught me that in someone else's house, you don't have an opinion, right? So I say these things to you, and I used to say these things when I first moved here to people that were from here, and I was not a very popular person. So my wife was like, "You need to tone that down." My wife is an attorney, and so she has a lot of customers, and she's known it. Yes. And she's like, "Look, stop being a gringo, and just you're not going to change history. I agree with you now that I met you and we've traveled the world together, but you're not going to change culture. So just accept it." And so I do.
And with that, we're running a little bit long, but sure. I wanted to get in our third question and give you a chance to talk a little bit about your business, because your business doesn't really have anything to do directly with Puerto Rico. But you are a pioneer in the ATM industry and crossing over with cryptocurrency, which is also something very avant-garde. Please share with our audience what you project will be the further developments in those industries.
Sure. So the whole concept of, so the first Bitcoin was created in 2009, and then by 2013, this ATM showed up that will allow a person to buy Bitcoin through an ATM, using cash. And so our company started way back then being the pioneer in driving these ATMs and allowing people to buy crypto through ATM. So today we're a software company, so we run this platform where different deployers connect their ATMs to my platform and allows them to sell crypto. So the platform does compliance, and it does all the liquidity, what we call the inventory of the crypto that you have for sale. So it does everything you need to have this business. The deployers do the last mile, which is like they buy the machine and they install it at retailers and deal with the retailer. So that's what we do. That's what we've been doing. Lately, we've been pivoting a little bit and being more of a what I call a financial center, right? So we still sell crypto. That's what pays our rent. But we are also selling other products and services to that same machine, right? We're selling, all kinds of financial services, whether it be, bill pay, debit, credit card top-ups, doing currency conversions in some markets. We also started selling gold notes, right? Something called a gold back, which is an actual piece of it's the size of a currency of a $20 bill, but it's made of 100% gold, 99.9% gold, right? And so it's been sold online, but we started dispensing that through ATM. So we are integrating all of that into one device, and that's where we see our future. We're still going to be in crypto, because that's a big part of our business, but we are also pivoting to offering these other products and services to our customers. And that's, we're going to see that across many different stores in the United States. And by the way, we were the pioneers in Puerto Rico in installing those kinds of machines, and we still have a leadership position here. So.
Fantastic. Well, George Fernandez, it's been great having you as a guest. As you know, we became instant friends when we connected a few weeks ago. How can our audience get more information about you and your company and your endeavors?
Sure. So we have two main websites. The crypto is bitstop.co, bitstop altogether .co, not without the M. And then the other one is the Gold ATM machine, and that website is goldatm.com, right? Same company, just two different products, goldatm.com.
This session is adjourned.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.